All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first session of our Saving Money and Reducing Truck Emissions webinar series. It's titled Checklist to Charge Electrification Planning. My name is Trey Pope, and I'm one of the air quality planners. And also we have Jason Brown, who's our program manager, as well as Anthony Maffa, and he's one of the air quality planners on our team.
To our DC site evaluation form for the GM Fast Break program.
All right, well, today I'll be facilitating and moderating this webinar, and during this session we'll have two presentations, one from Juliana VandenBorn with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, as well as Mike Roeth with the North American Council on Freight Efficiency, also known as NACFE. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A segment at the end. Just a little background on what our Saving Money and Reducing Truck Emissions program is. It also is known as SMART with an E on the end, so a unique spelling. It's an initiative to connect the trucking industry with emissions reducing and cost-saving technology, along with strategies that will help drivers, owner operators, and fleet managers to reach their sustainability goals in a cost-effective manner. Through this program, we work to build relationships, share information and resources, and also promote the use of smart way verified technology. Now, our first presenter for this session is Juliana VandenBorn. Next slide, please. And Juliana is a senior air quality planner on the Alternative Fuels and Energy team here at the North Central Texas Council of Governments, also known as NCTCOG, or also NCTCOG, as well as the Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities Coalition. NCTCOG was designated by the Department of Energy as the host agency for clean cities back in 1995. And DFW Clean Cities participates in the National Clean Cities and Communities Partnership to advance clean transportation nationwide. So with that, everyone, please welcome Juliana as she shares information on the steps involved in fleet electrification. Juliana.
Hi, thanks, Trey. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to start us off with a little bit of who we are. So like Trey mentioned, I'm with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, which is the regional planning agency for the DFW region. And then within the North Central Texas Council of Governments, there's also the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. That is the Regional Transportation Council, which is the independent transportation policy body for the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And then another kind of hat that we wear is we're designated Clean Cities Coalition for the DFW region. So one of the primary ways that NCTCOG works to implement cleaner vehicles like we'll be talking about today is through the Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities Coalition. And NCTCOG was designated by the Department of Energy as the host agency for Clean Cities in 1995. And as a part of that, we participate in the Clean Cities and Communities Partnership, which is a national network. Just really quick here on the right, you can see the North Central Texas Council of Governments region, and then also the non-attainment areas. So everything in the brown shade is currently in non-attainment or out of compliance with ozone standards set by EPA. So that just kind of a little context like drives a lot of the work we do here around alternative fuels and specifically electrification for today. So next slide, please. So I mentioned that Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities is hosted within NCTCOG, and just a little bit more on the National Network of Clean Cities Coalitions. So it's a nationwide Department of energy partnership that works to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, lots of different technologies and practices. And being the local Clean Cities Coalition drives a lot of what we do, like I said, and allows us to apply or be partners on funding opportunities that we might not otherwise be eligible for as like a planning agency or just an MPO. So this map here just shows all of the clean cities across the nation. So next slide. So a little bit more about my team specifically. So we're the Alternative Fuels and Energy team, and we're divided into 3 focus areas. So we have clean vehicles, alternative fueling infrastructure, and then energy integration and community readiness. So each team has specific goals, and these are outlined in our Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities strategic plan. So the Clean Vehicles team works to support the transition to alternative fuel vehicles. Infrastructure works to build and support reliable alternative fueling infrastructure. And then the energy integration team works to support communities in their transition to the alternative fuels, and then just ensuring that kind of all of the pieces fit together, and adding components such as like grid resiliency and workforce development. And then what we do, already mentioned a lot of it, but funding support, technical assistance, planning for the future, like I said, we do a lot of planning projects, also deployment, and just raising general awareness and education. So next slide. Okay, so jumping into the different steps to electrification. So first of all, if you're wanting to expand or get into the EV world, obviously having a plan is really helpful. So through each of these steps, we can actually, as a Clean Cities, provide consulting through these steps, and this is free of charge. So we can help you identify vehicles. So it's really important when you're getting into this space to determine what vehicles would be good candidates for a electric vehicle. We know that not all of them have the same capabilities. Maybe it's they don't have your current vehicle runs a lot of miles and maybe you don't want to switch over to an EV, it might not have the range, right? So kind of identifying that within your own fleet. It's also important to identify replacements because if you're looking for any type of funding, which I'll get into later, a lot of the funding opportunities will require you to have something to replace to get the funding for the new vehicles. So basically, scrap or get rid of a vehicle, they very few times will fund an expansion of a fleet, and usually like to do a swap. Um, there's a lot of tools to compare conventional vehicles to alternative fuels, and particularly a lot for EVs. So this is really helpful for determining total cost of ownership and emissions reductions if you're into that. And then identifying funding, like I mentioned, and then of course actually planning for infrastructure. So that is a really big. The infrastructure side is a little bit more hands-on than even the vehicle side. So next slide. Okay, so preparing for an EV expansion or getting into them at all for the first time, we definitely recommend just creating, if you don't have one already, or updating a fleet inventory and having all of these metrics on the screen available, because again, you will need a lot of this stuff for any type of funding opportunity you may be interested in. It's also just good to have fleet inventories, for lots of reasons, especially the engine, especially the annual mileage and the operational needs. When you are thinking about moving to an EV, these are things that you really want to look at, even if you're not considering a grant program, because you need to figure out if an EV is capable to replace your current conventional fuel vehicle. and it's going to actually meet the operational needs. So we can help with creating an inventory like this. We have templates. So yeah, next slide. Okay, so this is an example of one of the tools that we use and you can all use online. It's a part of the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which was created by the Department of Energy. So in this tool, you can actually research available vehicles and determine if they will meet your operational needs. So you can filter by vehicle type, manufacturer, there's all sorts of fuel type, class, weight, all different things, and that's called the AFDC vehicle search. So this is a really easy way to just kind of get started, right? Like I think a lot of times it's a little overwhelming with all of the steps, and this is a good place to start. Okay, what's even available? I can kind of eliminate some stuff just based on what's out there for in the EV space right now. So next slide. Also on the Alternative Fuels Data Center, there is an entire electrification page. So this is going to include things like how to charge your EV, switching to an EV in particular for fleet applications. There's an EV fleet fact sheet and also like an implementation checklist. So this is really helpful. We have a screenshot. You can't really see it, the specifics of it, but this is a downloadable checklist, and this actually kind of walks you through every single step. So we highly recommend that as a resource. Next slide. So I mentioned some of the electrification tools that are available for estimating like total cost of ownership or simple payback, which is something that calculates the length of time required to recover the cost of purchasing a new electric vehicle as compared to the conventional counterpart. And you can also do emissions reductions calculations. And there's a lot of different tools that have this available, but we recommend the Department of Energy's Alternative Fuel Lifecycle Environmental and Economic Transportation Tool, or we just call it A-Fleet. So you might hear that thrown around a couple times, and I will show you some examples of what that tool looks like. So next slide. So this is just an example of what the emission comparison would look like. So actually using the A-Fleet tool, so this is showing lifetime vehicle operation air pollutants on the left, and then petroleum, well-to-wheels petroleum use and greenhouse gas emissions on the right. And lifetime means over the entire lifetime of the vehicle. So if you're planning on owning your vehicle for 7 years, this is taking into account all of the air pollutants, which are the criteria air pollutants that our region is concerned about, and then petroleum use and greenhouse gases. So this is just an example. Obviously, you see a huge drop from both going to a regular F-150 to an F-150 Lightning, which is the all-electric version. We can see some emissions on the Lightning side, even though these aren't necessarily coming from the tailpipe. That's why they're called zero emission vehicles. It's zero emissions from the tailpipe. But we can see some PM, which is fine particulate matter emissions coming from like brake wear and brake and tire wear. So next slide. And just really quick, we're really familiar with the A-Fleet tool, so we can do a lot of these calculations and tests for you if you need help, or we can even teach you how to do it. And it's pretty simple to use on the online version. So I've mentioned a lot about funding. There's so much funding available for alternative fuels, a lot available for electric vehicles that I'll get into a little bit later, but there's some considerations when you're thinking about applying for grant programs. So like I mentioned, can the vehicle that you are thinking would be a good a good candidate for electric vehicles, can the existing vehicle you have be scrapped? So I mentioned that a lot of grant programs won't really fund a fleet expansion, but they require like a swap scenario where you're getting rid of one and getting a new one in its place. So you really need to decide, like, can I scrap this vehicle, or maybe it typically goes to auction. So that's something to consider. The fuel type of the new vehicle, typically they're usually, if you want funding, usually it's required that it's going to be a diesel vehicle. Um, but there's new funding coming out that actually has expanded that existing fuel type requirement. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Infrastructure funding needed. So a lot of the funding programs that have come out more recently have included electric vehicle infrastructure funding in the vehicle grant itself. So um, that's a consideration. A lot of people wonder if you can kind of stack grants and basically use multiple funds for the same project. And typically that is not available. There's some examples where you can do that. And for one that comes to mind is the tax credits that were have recently closed for the vehicles, but there still is a tax credit for infrastructure. That typically you could use federal funding and get the tax credit for the same project. But other than that, a lot of times grants won't let you get multiple funding sources for one project. And then also just kind of timing the schedule of your vehicle. If you're looking to get funding for it, they only are open and available in certain windows, right? So kind of timing the replacement or the purchase of your new vehicle with that funding program can be a little tricky if you don't have everything already prepped. We are really familiar with funding program cycles and can help you out with that, but that is definitely something to consider if you are looking for vehicle funding. So next slide. These are a few vehicle funding opportunities open right now through the state. There is like $31 million available through the Texas Volkswagen Emission Mitigation Program, and that's open through next summer. And then coming soon, NCTCOG is providing rebates for through the North Texas Zero Emission Vehicle Project. That's going to be opening later this month, and that will fund all electric, battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell class 6 and 7 vehicle replacements. And this program is unique because it opens the existing fuel type to not only include just diesel, but you can replace other internal combustion engine vehicles. So compressed natural gas or propane or even gasoline. So that is kind of unique. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Next slide. So infrastructure planning, here's some of the steps that would go into kind of future proofing and also just getting ready for electrification if you're planning on building out your own infrastructure. There's several considerations like coordinating with your utility as early as possible. Weather impacts, making sure your electric vehicle charging stations aren't in a floodplain or something like that. Determining kind of the charging speed and the amount of kilowatts that you need at your charging station to effectively charge your vehicles. These are all things that are really important to consider. So next slide. So lack of EV charging is like one of the top barriers to EV adoption that we see. And another barrier is just the cost of retrofitting an existing building with charging stations. So it's important to consider these EV parking infrastructure specifications. Some examples of EV infrastructure building codes include these examples here. So EV capable space, EV ready space, and EVSC space. So these just mean kind of different degrees of where your facility might be considered for electric vehicle charging. So if it's a new project, you would want to try to be in this EV space category, at least where you've got everything necessary to build an EV charger right there. You wouldn't necessarily have to do any digging up of concrete, things like that. There's lots of tips and tricks to kind of future-proof electrification expansion for infrastructure, like covering your conduits with metal grates instead of concrete if you're planning on doing a expansion a little later, but you're not going through with it all in one sweep. So yeah, next slide. So these are just a little bit more about the EV ready building codes and standards. Through the International Code Council, there are recommendations on energy codes that you can model your space after. For Texas, this is the newest edition of the ICC's energy codes, but for Texas, we have the 2015 edition adopted, and then a lot of the major jurisdictions like DFW, Austin, Houston, San Antonio have, I believe, the 2021 adopted. So these are very beneficial to look at when you are considering electric vehicle infrastructure to just help, again, your community and your spaces be EV ready, and just minimizing the need to go back and do any retrofitting to your space. So next slide. If you are not necessarily ready for permanent EV infrastructure, there are options. So there is completely mobile chargers available. This can be connected to like something like a generator or actually a battery. There's off-grid chargers available where it's connected to a renewable energy resource that is actually generating the electricity for the car in that space, and it's not even tied into the grid. So this is really helpful for emergency situations or something like a remote location. So there are options. Next slide. So common question we get when we talk about electrification is where to charge. So the alternative fuels data center that I mentioned earlier also has a station locator tool, and this is across the nation. For this map here is zoomed in on DFW. So you can see all of the available vehicle EV chargers. This is filtered specifically for medium heavy duty trucks. You can filter by class size. There's also all of the alternative fuel types. So you can look for different fuel types on here, like compressed natural gas stations that are all available. And you can look for filter by private or publicly accessible. In addition to that, TxDOT is also conducting the Texas EV infrastructure plan, which is in phase 2. And you can actually head to either NCTCOG's website or TxDOT's website to provide input on where EV chargers should be built or located specific to medium heavy duty trucks. So next slide. So I mentioned the tax credit for alternative fuel infrastructure. That is still open through June of next summer. And then the Texas emission reduction plan through the TCEQ, they have actually just opened their alternative fueling facilities program today. So those are two infrastructure specific funding programs that are open right now. Also, NCTCOG has a call for projects open specifically for EV chargers. There's about 15 million there that's available, but it does close at the end of the month. So just so you're aware. And next slide. So this is just kind of a summary of all of the different steps. So you've got just identifying your electrification opportunities. So this is everything kind of to do with the actual vehicles themselves. Then you get into planning your infrastructure, coordinating with the utility and doing future proofing, and then also kind of planning your procurement, whether you're going to use incentives or do a procurement method. This is kind of the summary of everything. So next slide. Here's tools and resources, and then the next slide after that is just a QR code to get involved with us with the Clean Cities. And then next slide after that is just our contact information. If you have any questions about anything or you want some technical assistance or consulting help, please reach out. Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you, Juliana. It was an outstanding presentation. We know this will serve as an excellent source of information for those looking to explore, plan for, and also implement the fleet electrification process, as well as seeking funding opportunities. So with that, next I'd like to introduce our second speaker. His name is Mike Roeth, and he's the Executive Director of the North American Council on Freight Efficiency, also known as NACFE. Mike has 15 years experience leading NACFE from its founding to the Run on Less demonstrations and also emerging technologies guidance reports. Mike also has a background as a mechanical engineer, and he hails from Ohio State with decades of transportation experience. Everyone, please welcome Mike Roeth.
Hello, and thanks, Trey. And I don't know if Jason's going to run my slides, but pay attention, Jason. This is going to go fast. I got a lot of good stuff,
Yes.
and I wanted to give it to you. So
Yes, you bet. You bet.
This off to the right. I mean, this is one of my favorite electric truck deployments. It's a 92 battery electric trucks at Schneider in Southern California. They were in our Run on Less in 2023. And they're doing well there. They're struggling with some high electricity costs, mainly because they are in port drayage 24/7 or 20, maybe like 20, let's call it like 26, where they operate multiple shifts. And they basically need to charge the truck when it returns to the site to be able to keep rolling inventory out for the drivers. So a bit of a challenge there where they aren't able to really do much managed charging because they're just using them so frequently. But little side note there. So let's go to the next one. Next slide. So this is who we are. Everything's free and available at NACFE.org, runonless.com. So if you don't know us, or if you do know us, I'm going to remind you that there's a lot of information there. I apologize if it's kind of hard to find stuff, but with respect to electric trucks, we have a area that we call emerging technologies on NACFE.org. The electric truck works there, hydrogen truck efforts are there, resources, reports, videos, etc. And then on runonless.com is what I'm going to share a lot with you today, because I sort of have breaking news from the run. We just completed it a couple of weeks ago. Next. So we do Run on Less, and it's been it's a labor of love. We enjoy doing it. We started it in 2017 as kind of a extra thing that NACFE does, and now it's so ingrained. We do it every 2 years. We focused the first couple of years on diesel and natural gas trucks and long haul and regional. Then we spent a couple of run efforts in 21 and 23 solely on battery electric vehicles. It was the exciting new thing that many of us, including myself, thought was not going to be. It just batteries haul freight. You got to be kidding me. Maybe it'll move a bicycle around town or a bus in city, but it won't haul freight. I was so wrong. Matter of fact, I'm kind of known as the guy that lost his mind in the trucking industry with respect to diesel being replaced by battery electric, and we'll get into that. But so we concluded out of those two runs that battery electric vehicles were going to scale and probably be the solution, maybe even quicker than we thought, in intra-city vans and step vans, medium-duty box trucks, and potentially city heavy-duty tractors that stay close to home. But today I'm going to talk mostly about long haul. And so what are the multiple solutions in longer haul that are there, and how we should be looking at them next? So when we concluded Run on Less Electric Depot in 2023, these were Class 2B to Class 8 battery electric vehicles, the sole thing we looked at. And we concluded 4 major findings. On top left, these trucks work really well in certain duty cycles. And as I'm talking about battery electric trucks out in the marketplace, oftentimes I'm excited and pleased that there continue to be benefits of these trucks that start to show up. Drivers love them. Maintenance and repair is starting to actually prove better than diesel. Of course, we expect it to be, because so many less moving parts and simpler vehicles. But other things like, the air quality in warehouses where these trucks operate, or recently was talking to, I think it was Home Depot, about how their tractor trailers come into their lumberyard buildings. If those were electric, they're thinking there would be significant facility savings, et cetera, of not having, and just a better work environment for the people in those warehouses or in those areas. Top right, we said 2 years ago that infrastructure, depot charging of these trucks was going to be the primary way, but that we needed strategically placed charging along freight corridors here in 25. We've seen that. We saw it. I'm going to show some of it here in some Run on Less 25. We call it Run on Less messy middle results. Lower left, we need the OEMs to come with better cost and weight improvements on these trucks, particularly in the heavy duty tractor atmosphere. So I would say we haven't really seen that with the traditional manufacturers, the Volvos, the Freightliners. They're actually, with the change in administration and regulations, they're slowing down some of their production and their product improvement activities. So that's not good. The Tesla Semi is ready to launch, and it's hasn't sacrificed any performance. I'll show that here in a little bit. But we do have many new entrants, or continuing to get new OEMs that's stepping up in the space. And in heavy duty, I'm going to show one here, a Windrose tractor. Looks very similar to a Tesla with respect to center driving position and aerodynamics, but that is proving to absolutely likely improve cost and weight over what we saw 2 years ago. Next slide. So what are we doing, and what did we do here in 25? We sort of described the next couple of decades as a messy middle, and many of you have probably seen our work here. What we mean by that is that on the way to electrification of goods movement across all classes, in our opinion, it will be a bumpy road. The infrastructure that you guys all are working on, as well as cost and many other things, are going to be a challenge. We'll also see a number of alternatives emerge, some of which we've been working on for decades, and we see that scaling a bit in this messy middle. I'll talk about that in a minute. But what we did this summer was engage with the industry around diesel trucks, natural gas trucks, battery electric trucks, and hydrogen fuel cell trucks in long haul. Next. And so when we look at, our middle name is Freight. So North American Council for Freight Efficiency. We really don't do transit buses, school buses. We don't do service trucks like utility trucks or snow plows or dump trucks. We do vehicles moving goods. So 2B up to Class 8. And again, I already said, I think there's kind of a mic drop moment where the smaller classes will be electric. But when you get up into the medium and long return to base trucks, and long haul, it gets really tough. And so as we're moving towards electrification, we see other technologies emerging that can help the industry be more sustainable in parallel. Next. So here's what we mean by that. So, present situation, diesels with a little bit of natural gas, long-term future, battery electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell, extended range electric vehicles from renewable energy. So 0, 0 in the future. It's going to be a while. There's the trucking piece of it, the infrastructure piece of it. There's the grid getting greener piece of it. Those are independent things working together to get there. In this middle, and so we call this the messy middle. So bear with me a second. It's a middle. We see an end, and the end is all electric. This middle will be messy for two reasons, in our opinion. One, it's just messy going from diesel to electric. A lot of things going on that I've just already mentioned. The other reason it's going to be messy is the industry is responding to the challenge of sustainability. And, many of these solutions here in the middle were not benefiting from prior regulations. And so they were already in process, a big growth in renewable natural gas, helping natural gas trucks. Diesel advancements that are creating more and more efficient tractors and trailers, burning less fuel to deliver the goods, and other things like hydrogen ice, et cetera. Next. So one of the things I've been talking about or bringing up a lot, we've done some work. This is like the last 10 years of Class 8. So when we talk about long haul, we're talking about Class 8. And Class 8 is made up of really three big segments. One is sleeper tractors. 44% of production over the last 10 years of Class 8 trucks are sleeper tractors. Many, and I've done polls when I bring this up or before I bring this up, that many people believe that's much, much, much higher, like 75, 80, or even 100%. 25% of this is work trucks. So these tend to be concrete mixers, garbage trucks, street sweepers, concrete pumpers, hundreds of different applications of vocational work trucks. 25% of Class 8. And the remaining 30% are day cab tractors. So 74% of the Class 8 are tractors pulling trailers around the country, some in cities, many across long distances. The day cab tractor has grown a bit from maybe 25 to 30% in the last 20 years. And we see that growing even more, taking away some of the sleeper tractor because of hub and spoke, return to base, regional haul. We've got e-commerce is driving that a bit, lots of warehouses, et cetera, et cetera. So as there are more day cabs built, from the freight movement changing a bit to more predictable return to base routes, we think that is a tailwind or an opportunity for alternative fuels. Because now you can put that electric charging, that natural gas infrastructure, even hydrogen at the home base where the truck is returning. It also helps the driver return home as well. Next. All right, so messy middle, what did we do? We did a boot camp over the summer, 12 sessions, 3 workshops, everything's recorded, 44 expert speakers. This is all still available to anybody that wants to go. Look at runonless.com and go to the boot camp. So a lot of good information there. Next. And then what we did after we completed the boot camp, so we selected and we were able to, it's not so much us selecting as we encouraged fleets to participate in the run and join us to show off what they're doing with these technologies in the real world on real routes with real truck drivers every day. So we twisted some arms, we talked to some fleets, we were able to get 13 to agree to be part of Run on Less. In June and July, then we went out and visited all 13. So the NACFE team went on the road. We had a video crew at each site. This is us in Southern California at a pilot where we were creating the video for a hydrogen fuel cell truck being operated at Pilot. This is a truck hauling hydrogen, and a hydrogen trailer hauling hydrogen with a hydrogen fuel cell electric truck. Next. And so we did all that in June and July. August, we published a lot of profiles, so 10-minute video on all of them where 105 people that we interviewed at the 13 sites shared the real, good, the bad, and we were kind of careful with the ugly about deploying these trucks. A lot of good stuff. So I'd really encourage you to go hear from the truck drivers, watch those videos. There's tons there. We also produced some more videos, some stories from the run videos, and some hot takes videos, very short TikTok-ish kind of videos during the run. Then in September, we actually conducted the run. So here's actually 14 trucks that we followed. We published their data every day of operation between September 8th and September 25th. And you can go on to runonless.com metrics and you can see what each of these trucks did every day. And that's what I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes explaining. Next. So here are 4 diesel trucks. I said we have 14 in total. This is 4 diesel. Top right is a Schneider truck running beverage routes, mostly in California. And so a pretty high usage of renewable diesel with that truck. We're now analyzing all the data in very detailed fashion to understand, where did they fuel, what percent of their fueling was renewable natural gas, probably blended with some biodiesel, or was it more conventional diesel, petroleum diesel with a biodiesel blend, and understanding what happened with that truck. But most of their miles were with renewable diesel. Lower right is a Frito-Lay truck that ran on biodiesel. So biodiesel is a less refined version of renewable diesel, and that truck did really well all throughout the Midwest. So headquartered or domiciled out of Topeka, Kansas. Both those trucks also did really well on MPG. The 2 to the left were in really long haul over the road, so irregular routes. And these were both tractors, trailers outfitted with nearly all of the technologies NACFE would suggest to get high MPG. And they're driven by a couple of truck driver savants. The lower left was a team driven by a really seasoned fuel economy Roberto Sandoval. I mean, he's just he can just get super high MPGs. And then he was coaching a trainer in the other half of the day that was in the truck. And then top left is Henry Albert, and he's just an excellent driver for fuel economy. Those 2 trucks basically did the same amount of fuel economy, different loads, different routes, different parts of the country, but they both did 11.6 mile per gallon. I remember watching this over the 18 days, and it was a holy shit moment for me. I mean, I've been around these high MPG trucks and around this work for a long time, and that is incredible. And what it tells us is there's a lot of potential improvement for diesel. So you can go to the next slide. I bring in some of the stats that I've just been sharing. But basically, if we burn less fuel moving freight, that is definitely decarbonization and a great thing. Occasionally it's not that sexy, and the trucking magazines and the conferences don't want to have panels talking about just good old efficiency, but it's huge and really important. It should be recognized. Okay, so now I'm going to move to natural gas. We had 3 trucks in natural gas. All of these companies are focused on getting as much renewable natural gas as possible. So there's the situation, I don't remember the exact term, but you can buy natural gas, renewable natural gas, and but not actually pump renewable natural gas into the truck. The great analogy my friend Dan Gage gave me was that if I deposit $100 in an ATM in Ohio, and then I travel to Texas and I take $100 out in Texas of an ATM, it's still my $100, but it's not the exact $100 I put in. So both of them all 3 of these using renewable natural gas. All 3 of these are using the new 15 Cummins with pretty, I'm not a salesman for Cummins, but that engine is very good on fuel, lighter weight, designed for natural gas. And these 3 trucks went into some really challenging routes. Next. So kind of what we learned from these natural gas trucks is they can do really hard work. They can be a very clean alternative fuels for long range heavy loads. So 2 of the 3 of these were consistently over 120,000 GBW. So these trucks are doing the work of 2 tractors and 2 drivers. Next. Here's one of those trucks out of Alberta or Edmonton, Alberta. And so it went far north, west, east, south in those 18 days. And this is an example of the data you can go play around with, if you want to. Next. All right, so this is the group we're here to kind of hear from, or I'm guessing you guys are here to hear from. These are our battery electric fleets. Top left is Saya. Any of us could go out on a freeway in 20 minutes. We'll see a couple of Saya red trucks there. I think close to 8,000 tractors and like 50,000 trailers and less than truckload all over the country, every 48 contiguous states. They ran 2 Tesla semis. Top right is 4Gen Logistics, a fleet moving fast with battery electric trucks in Southern California. This company does long drayage, is the way I would call it. And they operated a Volvo. Lower right is a Freightliner with Navoya, they don't like me calling them this, but a small startup all-electric fleet operating in California, Texas, and Nevada. And so that's a Freightliner eCascadia. And then finally, lower left is Joyride Logistics, an amazing little fleet of 300 trucks out of Phoenix, Arizona, operating across all over the Southwest with those 300 diesel trucks. And their sort of unique business model is they get their drivers home every other night. So they go out maybe 500 miles, the driver drops load, spends the night, and then returns the next day, bringing it back home, and then, getting ready for another trip. That is a Windrose battery electric heavy-duty tractor, a globally engineered truck for planning to go into production at multiple continents, using a lot of Chinese mature heavy-duty components, batteries, axles, motors, etc. So next slide. So here's what we saw here. I was surprised about the performance of these battery electric trucks, but they were also in line with what the NACFE team expected. Let me go to the next slide because I'll explain this data in a couple of charts. So this is the one Tesla semi that was in slip-seated operation. So it was operated by one driver during the day, a different one at night. Over on the left, it's kind of small, but I've chosen days 8 to days 11. These are just 3 or maybe 4 of the 18 days. This truck did the same thing every day it operated during the 18 days. Top right is the route it took. So it left Stockton, California at the north with trailer full of, less than truckload, which means multiple shippers' products in that trailer. Drove all the way down to Bakersfield, dropped a trailer, and then picked up another full trailer and went back up to Stockton. So they're moving goods in a out and back manner. The lower right, the purple is the miles traveled during the day. And so those are 3 days. So the high peak is the route that they went from north to south and back. And so if you just look at that top peak, it's somewhere, depending on the day, but somewhere between 440 and 465 miles. So the state of charge is in green. So you can see that started out each of those trips at about 100%, dropped all the way to under 10%. It's a little hard to see. When that first driver got back to Stockton, got on the Tesla charger at 750 kilowatts, they were only on that charger maybe 20 or 30 minutes because the next driver was there and ready to go. So they only charged it to 40% because during the day, that same truck operated in city pickup and delivery. You can see they only operated maybe 50, 60, 100 miles at most on that third day. And that truck, or that route, took the state of charge from 40% down to, say, 25 or 20% before it returned, and then had a longer time on the charger. But you can see a very fast charge rate, 750 kilowatt, to get that Tesla semi all the way back to 100% before then, again, at the night time, or whatever time they left in the late afternoon, that driver did another long run down to Bakersfield. Next slide. And then the Joyride truck with Windrose, this is kind of interesting. We went and visited them. We did the video, worked with all the drivers and so forth. And when we did that in, early July, I asked them, well, how are you going to charge this truck in September? I don't see any chargers here at the Joyride site in Phoenix. And they said, "Oh, we got a plan. Don't worry about it, Mike." And I'm like, "Well, okay. I'd like to know what your plan is," but trusted them, and here we went. So on day one, and so this is, I've selected all 18 days here in that day selection on the left. And you can see at the top right, this truck and its freight and its routes was all over the place. So they started in Phoenix. They spent time in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and California, all in the 18 days. Actually, 15 days of real driving and a couple days, a number of days of rest. All of the green dots, it's a little hard to see, but all the green dots are charging events, and they were all over the place. So as we got into starting to ask them about it during the run and then so forth, they stopped at one truck public charging location, and it's the Green Lane site in Colton. But the rest of them were primarily Electrify America sites at Walmarts, many of which could have been NEVI funded or funded before that with Electrify America. And they would do that and hit those, in the middle of the night when, they weren't really getting in the way. They were careful how to swing the trailer around near that charger and charge over a couple of hours and get out of there and go ahead and deliver the freight. Obviously not a sustainable practice for heavy duty long haul trucking, but we think it's very creative and innovative, and the trucking, it's a good example of the trucking industry will figure stuff out. They will take advantage of whatever trucks and tools we get to deliver the goods. So next slide. Real quickly, we did some fuel cell trucks. Go ahead and go to the next. These were both Hyundai fuel cell trucks. I talked about the Pilot one in Southern California. We also had a Penske truck Penske truck that ran around Dallas. Both of these trucks did high intensity urban routes. That truck's not really designed yet for long haul over the road, but they did lots of miles, very reliable, operated every day. One did 411 miles in a single day. Really impressive they did better than maybe I thought for a hydrogen fuel cell truck. Probably shouldn't say it that way. Okay, next. Finally, a couple of things. One, next Thursday, NACFE will be publishing with a press release and a news bulletin. If you get our newsletter, you'll receive it. Some initial findings from the run. And with that, many of which is kind of what I've been talking about here. So looking forward to announcing some more details. And with that, we'll be publishing a data set. So I won't know what to do with this data set. It'll have tens of thousands, if not millions of lines of data. But, if any of your organizations have those geeky data scientist folks that want to dig in, that data will be available next week. Thanks for your time. Sorry I ran a little late.
All right, great presentation, Mike, and we sure do appreciate it. It was very informative on the state of different powertrain types. Also what they've achieved in the history of NACFE's run on less demonstrations. So with that, I'd like to take a moment and open the floor to our Q&A segment. I do have a question for both Mike and Juliana. This was sent in prior to the webinar, so here we go. What are primary motivators in Texas for considering zero emissions trucks?
Boy, I don't do all my work in Texas, but before this administration, there was a desire by the trucking fleets to help the OEMs with the upcoming regulatory compliance, right? I mean, we did have ACF, which was a fleet rule in California, but ACT and EPA, Greenhouse Gas Phase 3, as they were approved and put into law, were going to drive the manufacturers. So the fleets were playing nicely with the manufacturers, saying, okay, well, how can we help you with this? And maybe it wasn't that blunt, but that was a driver. Now, I think there's two drivers that I see right now, both of which are maybe smaller motivators to many, because things like the tariffs and current state of freight volume is really a headwinds to anything. They're not buying diesel trucks, let alone battery electric trucks. But the two I see is continued expectations and questions for customers around sustainability. So many customers, shippers, are still asking fleets to move the goods more sustainably and want to know what it costs me and how do I make it happen. And the second reason is that this idea of total cost of ownership. And when I bring that up as a motivator for fleets, some people laugh at me at $450,000 a heavy truck that'll never pencil out. What the hell are you thinking, Mike? You're an idiot. But we've done enough work. I see Rick Mihalik on here. He and I have done a lot of work on cost up from the ground. And we believe these trucks over time and probably sooner and later can be much easier to build, easier design, easier to sell, simpler, quite frankly, and that'll show up in cost as we go forward. And we got those two new players, and so they might end up being disruptors as well with cost as much as or pricing as much as anything. So those are my thoughts on that, Trey.
All right, great. We appreciate that, and it sounds like a very optimistic and hopeful outlook.
Yeah.
We all look forward to seeing. So, Juliana, I'm going to focus this question on you, if you'd like to answer. How are the various utilities in the North Central Texas region incentivizing truck charging infrastructure?
Yeah, so mostly for the NCTCOG region, we are covered by Encore, and they have done a lot of work to get the community and fleets and local governments kind of in conversations about electric vehicle charging and getting set up for infrastructure. They actually have this program called Evolution, like evolution, but evolution. Yeah. So they host meetings across DFW Metroplex about quarterly, and they bring out all of their staff. They walk you through their entire process from the utility standpoint. They did at one point have a program set up where fleets and entities could apply and work with Encore on that. I believe it was kind of a technical assistance funded type situation. I don't know if they're still accepting applications for that, but either way, they're very, very helpful. They're very knowledgeable. They want to help kind of get everybody prepared. So definitely reach out. I believe there's a few other utilities, but Encore is for sure the most proactive, I would say, as of right now.
Okay, great. That's great to hear. And I hope that everybody has the information they need on that. And also be sure and check out the links that we have. So everybody will receive a copy of the presentation subsequent to the session. And that concludes the Q&A session. So before we adjourn, I'd like to go ahead and share some details on our next webinar session. It's called TCO Deep Dive, Understanding the Lifetime Cost of Alternative Vehicles. And we'll host that on Wednesday, January 21st, 2026 at 1 p.m. Central Time. During that session, we'll have presentations from Cabell Hodge with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, as well as Juliana VandenBorn and also Alyssa Cunningham, and they're both from NACFE. And further down the slide, you'll see the registration link. And since everyone attending this live session will receive a copy of the presentation, you'll be able to click on the Microsoft Forms link that you see at the bottom to register for the next session. Next slide, please. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you to our presenters and all the attendees. This is our contact information, so please be sure and reach out if you have any questions. This is the first of a series of webinars that SMART will be hosting. We also hope to see you at our next webinar about total cost of ownership on January 21st, 2026.